Alright, so right here you see me using my Wilton set of fondant sculpting tools. Um, and they aren't the best quality tool to use for fondant sculpting. I probably need to invest in like a pair that clay sculptors use uh, in their sculpting process. They broke on me, as you can see here in this segment. Here you just see flour in a bowl for helping the item to keep its form while it dries. Alright, here you see me adding Tylose powder to the fondant. It's just a drying agent, additive, not sure which one, probably considered both, that helps the fondant to cure a lot quicker so that it hardens a lot faster than just allowing it to air dry. And just another quick note about the Tylose, I added to each portion of Poe's body in this figure, but you won't see me do it on camera each time, but just know I add a little bit to each portion of fondant that I mix. Doing this essentially creates what's called gum paste, and I probably should have pre-mixed the colors ahead of time, but I didn't want to make too much of one color in particular, so I just added it to the portions that I needed it. Right about here, I realized from looking at my model photo that his pants were a little too big, so I cut a bit off the top. If you're watching this video and you are a novice or you're new to creating gum paste fondant figurines, those are just cocktail sticks, toothpicks that you see there sticking out. They serve a twofold purpose. One is to help him stand upright on the cake because he is going to be standing, and then the other is to connect his body. So even if you have a figurine that's sitting, you still may need to use cocktail sticks, and I would highly recommend using them in order to push the different portions together as you're creating your figurine. Alright, so you see I have assembled Poe's body and I'm taking them apart because I forgot to add a little bit of, that's just water, everybody, and I put actually way too much in there. I use my Wilton wet pen. I usually do not use that thing. I hate it. I end up just usually grabbing a small little lid or measuring cup or something of water and use my paintbrush to kind of paint thin layer of water onto the place where I need the fondant to stick together. So that's what you see me doing there. And a couple of things about that again, in case you are new to making these figurines. When you wet fondant like that or gum paste, it creates the water itself essentially is like a glue that helps to get it all wet and sticky so that when it dries, it fuses together. And then also about the fondant, not the fondant, but the Wilton pen. It's actually a neat contraption. Just the one thing I don't like about it is the fact that when you squeeze it, way too much water comes out in order to get that brush wet. I think just the mechanics of the thing or how they made it is just not good. The idea was great, keeps you from having to get up to refill or grab water or just keeping it on hand like an ink pen, but just full of water. But it's just not good in terms of the design. And here you see me using it again, and it's still wet from the first time I squeezed that dab of water down. And I was just too lazy to get up and get a lid of water. I keep saying lid. I use little tops off of things for water because you don't need that much, literally. You saw me using it again because I just didn't want to have to get up. My Wilton tool pen was sitting there, and so I decided to use it to wet the surfaces of the fondant like I needed. Alright, so here in the bottom there on the styrofoam, and sorry for the look of my styrofoam cylinder there, cake dummy, as you all can see, it gets a lot of use with me poking things in it. But there's a wooden dowel going between Poe's legs, and I put that there so that he could hold his shape while he dries. I could ensure that there would be that gap in between once he came to his final drying point. right, so here I have just taken a little bit of that brown fondant that I had, or gum paste, mixed it with just a bit of white fondant, uncolored fondant, to give it a tan color so that I could make the paw pads for Poe's hands. And here you saw me roll it out into a strip and then cut it into small little pieces. And then if you make it round enough, you can literally take a round piece of fondant, and if you flatten it out, it'll turn into a 2D circle. So that's what you see me doing here, and I'll do that for both hands. Alright, so here I took Poe's, you saw me just quickly there, put Poe's arms into my bowl of flour slash whatever you want to call it. I use it to dry things into the form that I need them to be. And just to be completely transparent in terms of time lapse here, Poe had actually sat overnight and dried in that form, and his arms as well. So I wanted to make sure they were nice and stiff so that the next day I could come back and make his head. And in terms of time, you probably could actually, since I did use the Tylose powder in there to help the fondant to dry faster, I could have just let a few hours pass, maybe about 3 or 4 hours pass, and they probably would have been stiff enough to do what I needed them to do in terms of holding their shape and being hard enough to handle. But I just let them sit overnight, and then I came back the next day because in terms of time, I think this is about a 20-25 minute video. It probably took me about 3 hours total to actually finish Poe in his entirety. And in terms of time, if you're thinking like, man, that is a long time, case in point, Poe's eyes here that you see in this final cut of the video, I literally created his eyes and then ripped them out because they just did not look the way that I wanted them to look. So what you see is actually the second rendition of me creating Poe's eyes. So you have to kind of take in account things like that. Like you may make something, then you kind of sit back and you look at it and you go, "Is something off about it?" So I did have to do that. So when making these little figurines, especially in this case when there was really nothing else to kind of go off of in terms of how to make them, I had to just kind of wing it there. I do want to point out, you notice I'm working with Poe's head inside of the flower bowl. I cannot tell you all how many times I've went to make a character with a rounded head or a round shape of some sort, and I decided I wanted to work with it right on my flat surface, and quite naturally, if it's not dry, and it's not going to be, you need it to be pliable. The head, I raise it up off the surface, of course, with a round piece, and it has now become flattened on one side. So I've learned over time to, if I want a fondant piece that I'm working on to keep its rounded shape, to try and work with it inside the bowl. And another reason why I allowed Poe to dry, or his body to dry overnight. As you can see, it's taken a while to get the details and things on his face done. So the face alone almost takes about as much time as it does to do the body. You all have to excuse the state of my work table there. Once I get started on something, I'm like laser focused on it, and I'm pulling tools out and they're all over the place. I know when you're watching other YouTube videos, everybody's background always looks so neat and pristine. But if you're looking at my station, and I'm pretty sure other people's stations on these YouTube videos probably look the same. They probably just have way more advanced recording equipment than I do at this state in the game. And that black thing you see there constantly in the frame is the stand for my camera. So this is my first video, so I'll get it right eventually. In the background there, if you're noticing the green spiral kind of winding up, that was actually the snake from Kung Fu Panda that you see that I made as well. But this video is all about Poe. So if you're watching and you're wondering how I made the snake that's in the thumbnail for this video, he's actually edible as well. He's made out of gum paste / fondant / gum paste. Just let me know in the comments and I'll try and recreate them for you. Another tip here on the screen, you see I'm using my fondant smoother to roll out that strip of white fondant so that I could do the white wrap around on Poe's shoes. Whenever you're trying to get a long snaky piece of fondant, using that fondant smoother helps that to get a smooth rope, and it actually helps to extend it and make it a bit longer, and it thins it out. So just a tip for when you're rolling out fondant pieces and you're wanting it to be nice and thin and even too. It keeps it even as well if you're applying even pressure as you're rolling that fondant out. And I also realized in the making of this video, I think I maybe put Poe away for the day once I made his head. And then I came back later and started working on him, and I decided I wanted to make that red and yellow belt that's going around his waist. I actually started making it and forgot that, hey, you're making a video tutorial for Poe, and you totally forgot to record that piece of creating him. But it was a really simple thing to do. I literally took a piece of yellow fondant, rolled it out flat, cut off a strip, and then just went down the strip with my red food color paint and made, those blocks that you see that are going along his belt. So it wasn't very hard. If you're here and you can make the pieces of Poe, making that belt is not hard at all. So we're almost done here. I just have as you can tell, the lid off of I believe my black gel food coloring, or it may be brown, not sure. I think it was a dark brown. And I'm just going around the bottom of the shoe to give it the sole piece that you see in the photos of Poe on the DVD cover or the movie cover. Or online, in his toes as well. So, or claws, I'm not sure what you would call it, on a bear. But I just painted those on. It was a lot easier just to paint those on versus trying to make those out of fondant. And then here, finally, you see me attaching Poe's arms. They've had a chance to dry and really harden to the state that I need them to. I'm not sure if in the previous segment the arms were already on. I think maybe I went back and added water because I needed them to actually fuse together. And you also saw me insert a cocktail stick there so that his arms stay in place.